뭐 선진한테 송지지 공통토벌 대해서도 랑사자장 최초와 연인형 장영다주.
Now, first of all, please consider that all sentient beings have to be brought to the state of supreme enlightenment. And to do this, now, here I decide to request the teaching of Mahamudra. With this noble attitude in mind, to request that we please
listen. Lama Tambana, Sansalo, Tambu, Sajajamu, Yelijam, Song. I don't so suki Lama, Zala Lama, Gardin Dundan. Tela, yes, one Sansala, and so.
Now, the text that we are working with now is the instruction of the 4 words of Mahamudra, and the text starts out with a word of respect and saying, I prostrate to all the genuine teachers. Specifically, meaning here those who are the ones that carry the transmission of this teaching so that we are able to receive it here now.
Tambo, and Sajajamu Yelijam, the ticket, Tambo, Lama, Sansalo, Sangu, Dumsing, and Diana. Then I don't know that Songi Hong double sepe tap, Nomso Lambatella, Tambo Lama.
Now, what is the reason that this text, which is called the 4 words of Mahamudra, starts out with this prostration to the teachers of the lineage? The reason is that we on our own would not be able to understand the proper path that leads to the realization of Mahamudra. For that reason, we have to rely on the genuine being, one who shows us the path, and for that reason we kind of honor this person here in the form of the prostration in the beginning of the text.
Tambo Lama Gube, Jumsini Kaliana, Dojoke Tamba, Yamin Shachatoba, Denijang, Tambo, Zanking, Gajonga, Po, Chew, Yambuve, Tiki Kiawaji. He gave a Gabso, Tongchan number Javaji, but Tela, Songi Shaka, Tuchin Pep. Songi Shaka Tuchin, Dani, Zanking, Pocheo, Yambu Kunge, then Sonju Sang, Damba Hune, then Shaka Tuchin, Lama, then Tombo Sonju to Tukjebai.
Now, talking about our own Buddha of this time, the Shakyamuni Buddha himself had to first train his own mind in previous lifetimes, and as it is reported, in one of those lifetimes he was born as the son of a potter. And his name was not Harry, but he was... And the very city that he was born in was called Namgyal, the all-victorious city. At that time, the Buddha was abiding in the place called Shakyamuni, the Almighty, the Great Mighty Shakya. And in front of this Buddha, he went and he requested the commitment of the Bodhisattva. So he promised to work for the benefit of all sentient beings and to achieve the state of full enlightenment.
Shaka to Jimmy and Sonju to the Senti San. Then Garatama, Sangitella, Sentin get Andrew. Sentina Gaukazo, Jimba Mumuta. Gaukazo Sentina, Sentin get Andrew, Sotum Song. Gaukazo Sentin get Andrew, Zepa Gum. Gaukazo Sentina, Zendu Momoti. Then Gaukazo Naro Sati and Sharab Gum. Then Dawatin, Garatama, Sangitella, San on the Susaba.
Now it was that first time that the Buddha, or present Buddha, had at this time engendered his mind towards supreme enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings in form of a commitment. And after this, carrying out this commitment, he trained himself in all the actions of the Bodhisattva through the time of 3 endless kalpas, 3 endless eons. And he trained himself in the virtue of generosity, virtue of ethical behavior, and in other words, for the benefit of beings, he trained himself in patience or joyful effort, or resting in mental absorption and stability, unified with the intelligence that is able to understand the true reality. All these activities he performed for the benefit of beings and to train his own mind.
Then, Karaton is only Chala Sananga, Sosa, Devilla, then Tatu, then Jagadoji, and number of Sanje, and Children Holo Ramba, some last of Goranzaba. That the legal Yantin Chabatin to Toa. Tea and Dayon, Tambo, Lama Shaka to China, then
And after this, after those 3 endless eons, the Buddha appeared in this our world, in this very world, and achieved full enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, taught the 3 cycles of teachings, Dharma to all sentient beings. And if we think of that whole story, he himself had to follow a teacher initially, because that very Buddha, Shakyamuni, that he met, was his teacher, in front of whom he formed this decision of working for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Sonji Jajatoba, then Sanjini, Children Holo or Tani, then Jagala, then Trova topic, and Jaga Turkin Jajota, and then Jaga Jinto, better than Jinto. That yellow was also for Tonji, then Shachatovic Garden and then Tenga, Turkin, and better than Chumani.
After his enlightenment, as has been said, he turned the wheel of Dharma for 3 times, and the benefit of those 3 cycles of teachings was that in India, in the noble country, 80 people appeared as those who have in great way realized the meaning of the teaching of the Buddha, the 80 Mahasiddhas, and also those who are known as the 6 ornaments of this world, 6 greatly learned scholars who are still famous to the present day.
Lama Pepper Cholayan, Kaukazu Lama Jabu Soto Pepper, Jabu and Rambo the Dawa, Chuja Dawa Zambo Dawa, Tendawati, then Jabu the Lama Soto Pepper. The Jabu Diga, Horonga, Banga, Meseta, Senji Tangila Sosuke, then Patujin Holoda Sawanti Palaso, Chu, then Senji Mombo Jet, Sonji Sala Kepanzaba, that then digging Zapayo.
So the fact is that a teacher in this world can appear in various different forms for us. It can be a king even, as has been shown by the story of the king Indra Bodhi, himself a disciple of the Buddha. Then later became a teacher and taught the various tantras to his disciples, like Guruyoga, Tantra, and so on. And also the story of the king Dawa Sangpo, who was the first one to receive the Kala Chakra Tantra and later became a teacher.
And then Yalama Pamigo so the Papa on Momboyo. Then Machi Trobe Jamutawa, Rechumpaka, Lama. And Rechumpaka, Lama, Tepopaka, Lama, Machi Trobe Jamu. Lama, Tepopaka, Lama, Machi Trobe Jamu. Then Lama Pamigo so the Papa. Then Kadukawa Zamu. Tilopa Lama. Lama. Then Kandroma never madam, Soka said the knee, then it took him, Kedu Chumbo Namjo Lama. Take on me, then the Lama permitted to the pepper.
Now, it is saying that the teacher can appear in various different forms. This also includes, evidently, the form in the female body, as has been shown in the past by, for example, Rechungpa's one teacher was Tilopa, and Tilopa again himself relied on the Dakini or Magic Tupajamo, and moreover, it was Tilopa who had as a teacher, as a female teacher, the Dakini Kawasamo. The famous Mahasiddha, Jumbo Naropa, relied on two teachers, female teachers, Sukasiti and Niguma, and so on. So there are many examples. This all is to show that initially, when we set out to put the instructions of Mahamudra into practice, and we want to achieve with those instructions the result of supreme enlightenment, then we need to depend on a teacher, someone who shows us the path clearly.
Yang daba dobu somji dojin chang jembe damba shani ni do diba satane dobu somji dojin chang jembe damba ti tane dambo dojin chong shani sang tane homa karwa don damba namde ni do jibe saja jembe damba yegi yema to dala tane sati namba ni we
Having understood now that there's a great meaning in, first of all, to honor one's teacher and all the teachers that have been the ones to transmit this lineage, then secondly, it is said here that from the mouth of the supremely and completely, perfectly enlightened Buddha in the form of Vajradhara, this teaching first derived. And it was heard by those who were worthy recipients, who were able to receive this teaching at that time. And the teaching is called by the name, the four statements or words of Mahamudra, presented in two parts.
This suggestion is Yamade, Tambo, Songi, Dorjin Chonga song, then Rama Kandi Kandi Ma Jayuan. He get Jipper Rambasha Tang. Jipper Rambade he Tani, Jipper Terrace on Dongwa,
The first part of the text presents all those teachers of the genuine teachers of the lineage that have been preserving this information to the present day, and the second part then is dedicated to the explanation of the so-called four statements of Mahamudra.
And Tambo Rama Jipper Rambasha Patiala, Yang Daba Dober Songi, Dorjin Chang, Chembu, Sajajamo Yegi Java, the Dorjin Chang Chembu Song. Dorjin Chang Chembu, Surkandi in Song. Daja Damba, Yami Shaka Tovatani, Saja Chamber, Jason Bergapso, then Chuko Dorjin Kor, Yang, then so on.
The start of the lineage is the Buddha himself, of course, and here it is said that the Buddha, the perfectly and genuinely enlightened being, manifested himself in the outer appearance of Vajradhara Buddha.
Songi ge song ti saja jembe je shonghin ge tena homa ge zo so yen na ten song chu samba do jin hu go zo ti 성준 선바도지 님도 공개 그 사제 전부 얘기 좀 이렇게 공개 톱차네 그 공개 주 되네 까도와보 그 공개 주 되는 얘기해서 깨네 내가 진정으로만 탐지게 되는 사제 전부 챙겨 자주요와 챙겨 톱요와 되는 데만.
We may wonder when the Buddha gave this teaching in form of Vajradhara, who was present at that time, and out of those who had the fortune to listen to the Buddha's instruction, one was outstanding in his capacity to receive this teaching. It was the Bodhisattva Vajradhara or Rinpoche, who then also, after having received his teaching, compiled an accessible form so that it could be passed on as instructions to others.
이때로 셔라잠보라서 성주선바 도진이 뭐시바 디 공에 다 공고 로마 주 소라서 그 저친바 때로 셔라잠보 다 대란
From out the maybe many people that Vajradhara instructed, the one we know as the most famous, the most important was the Tilopa.
And Tilopa 자장가롱총 두지가만 강총게 전부 되는 추모자와 되는 가바비자게 담바데 남문인데 되는 저기 Tilopa 되는 Tilopa 뒤에 다 사제 전부 얘기하면 담바 소라 놓아야나 뒤 기존 나로 변진나 놓아.
The Tilopa was also the origin of our particular lineage of the Karma Kamsang, and he passed on this information of the four words of Mahamudra to his main student, the Mahapandita Naropa.
아니 벤진 나로바도 뒤에 되는 저기 때로바 공리가 라마가 강송한테 되는 라마 강송한테 접네 되는 까와치고 균이게 와 까기 전부 균인지 되는 까와치고 이게 달아 되는 깝쟁이나 되는 저기 때로바게 되는 공이 투지라 예배를 똑바강 예배때 되는 벤진 나로바 생기라네 되는 나로바한테 들어가서
Tilopa was at the same time also the one who was the holder of the four lineages of the Buddha, which is not the same as those four words of Mahamudra. Anyway, he is known for those four lineages, and his main student was Naropa. He didn't give the teaching to Naropa just like that. He had Naropa pass 12 very hard tests. And after those hardships, finally he found that Naropa was ripe to receive the teaching and gave him the teaching of Mahamudra. And Naropa realized the meaning, understood the basic reality.
Naropa Marpa Losalawa, Marpa Losalandi Dambadina. Marpa Losat, Jagala, Tang Sam Pet. Tang Tambola, then Naropa, Lo Dana Juai. Tang Nibala, Lo Nala, Juai. Tang Sumbatella, Lo Sona Juai. Lo to do Dava Dangucha. Then Bessin Naropa, then
The main student of Naropa, the Mahapandita Naropa, is known as the translator Marpa. Marpa in Tibetan visited the noble country of India 3 times, and the first time he stayed for the length of 7 years. Then the second time 6 years, and finally 3 years. Altogether he spent the amount of 16 years in India. The main student of Marpa, the translator, to whom he passed on all those teachings, was the master of yogis, Milarepa.
Milarepa ge, Milarepa kona, homa moboyo, te noni, chodo chodo poshin, dawa tawa poshin, reishungpa, nima tawa poshin, je Gampopa. Niyoba, tige noni, tige damba de je Gampopa.
So then the teaching was passed on from Milarepa to his main students. Milarepa actually had many students, and two were outstanding in such a way that one was compared to the moon. He was called Rechungpa, and the other one is called Gampopa or Tenga Rinpoche, who was compared to the sun. And Gampopa was the one who received this particular teaching here, which is also known by the oral transmission of Rechungpa. So I just wondered why he was called after Rechungpa, but he actually passed it on to Gampopa, and just that he taught it to both anyway. So maybe then the other one doesn't feel jealous.
Je Gampopa ge, dehi pamo trobala na. Dehi pamo trobani zangde teni, to Milarepa la noni. Teni maron to kaji che chongji la yorwa. Ti noni teni to Milarepa ni ma jayunde. Digi damba te zo de teni nyongso lamba poa. Teni rupa kaji ke teni damba de nyongso langa. To Milarepa ni zo de ma jayunde.
Now, Gampopa passed on the instruction to one of his main disciples, the Tathagata Mahamudra. And Mahamudra again to his main disciple Milarepa. And here we're right in the middle of the 4 greater and the 8 lesser lineages of the Dakokaji. And in particular then through Milarepa, this instruction flourished to the present day in the lineage that is known by the name Drupa Kagyu.
To Milarepa ni, Ranga Zangpa Jari, Tanda Changi, Drupa Kaji ke lama tsing, Ranga Zangpa Jari, te Geso Bangampo Dori, te Yong Ji Jabu, te Tusi Janga Parindi, te Genjin Sorupa Chuji, te Satong Se Rishin, Mangang Wese Singi, te la Sewa Namka Jansing, te Inzong Zing Hako Ongsu Ongbo, te Daolong Tongpa Ngong Chapa, te Nyangmi Shara Ramjamba Songji Singi, te Jesse Rupi Genjin, te Nyangmi Gesong Repa, te Dala Wo, Zeta Tepa Doltri, Rupakaji Nima Jayunga.
And so the teaching was passed on by the Mahasiddha Milarepa to the various teachers of the Drupa Kagyu lineage that I just read out now, so I think everybody heard it. And finally, the first one of those was the famous teacher of Drupa Kagyu, Ndogen, the protector of beings, Tsampa Kyari, and the end of the lineage was the one here, Nyame Gyutsang Repa. So all those were the masters of the lineage that received this teaching and passed it on. Now, after that narration of the teachers of the lineage, it mentions that in the very occasion where we are able to receive the instruction of Mahamudra, and later on, when we try to put that instruction into practice and integrate it into our own experience, one thing is indispensable that is called in Guruyoga, that is that we connect ourselves from our heart with our own teacher.
Ipa jipa tele so, damba sheba ta dambo sati lama jipe ke rama lama jipa tele jipe ke damba sheba sati niyaba. Ti sati dambo tele de lama jipe rama ta kongdo samba. Ta lama jipe ke rama tele damba sheba ta ti yiri jamandere. 이봐 제빨에 소마 담바 우라 우이셔 봐자 사자점고 얘기해 봤어요. 장 대는 책이
We arrived at the second part of this text after the presentation of the lineage of those who did this teaching. We come to the actual teaching. The actual teaching that has been transmitted to the present day is known by the name, the four statements of Mahamudra, and this instruction here is presented then in this order in four different parts.
이게 좀만다라 담보 생기 제작게 이바 생기 여잡대 봐 순바 생기 보살게 이바 생기 람체 봐 제요래 다 담보 생기 제작게 봐 제.
Now we have four parts here. Four parts are, first of all, to find out, to clarify the very nature of this mind. Secondly, to be shown the skillful means how to let the mind abide. Thirdly, how to clarify, to clear away those possibilities where the mind could go astray, to cut off those wrong paths and possibilities to go astray. Fourthly, it is to show the path along which this mind can be developed.
다 생인의 담보 가능해서 다 심지 제작게 심지는 간이 요리 간이 용거도 간은 내게 도사 가wan 도거도 딱히 딱히 저당 샘도지 간대에나 롱송도 지가 롱송도 운동 특기게 샘히바 마시나 나의 샘 나의 샘에서 메디 그딩게 받다니 그래서 아때가 샘도 난다.
Now, when we are in the first steps here, which is to clarify all about mind, awareness, I'm using those terms now interchangeable as long as there is no difference in meaning, then we have to ask, where does this mind or awareness actually come from? Where does it arise from? What's its origin? How does it appear? And some might then be confused and say, well, after all, we don't know really what do you mean by mind? And the Karmapa, Rangzung Dorje, in one of his teachings that is known by the name, the one word of heart advice, says, if someone claims not to know what mind is, well, mind is just when they say my mind, I, my mind, and so on, and what is thinking about this and that. So all this flickery process of thinking, this is what we refer to as mind. Okay, so there's no chance that you will say, you can say that I don't know what mind is. And so, but then we have to ask, what then is the origin of this mind? Where does it come from? How does it appear here and now?
아티 아론송게 농동 나조파 제베 샘달라 단 코바라 옛나야 샘디기 예제 샘달라 때는 되는 통진 코바다 경근도 코르게 동나타 차 샘달라 때는 되는 다바 송지게 연대 통지장 샘달 수용근도 이 연도 되는 코바도 냥일인데 보니까 예제다고 세게.
And as it is the case, this very mind and mental operation is the basis for the appearance of all this world around us that presents us with the various types of suffering and pain and problems, known by the name of the cycle of suffering, the samsara, and at the same time, this very mind also serves as the basis for the arisal of the noble qualities of the awakened ones, the Buddhas. Thus, it becomes equally the cause or the basis for the arisal of what is the world of suffering, samsara, as well as the pure world of beyond suffering, nirvana.
Namdo maybe also, I don't know, send the Yorema, send me a bundle, Marwa. They and do, then Namdo Yeba, maybe send Kani Younger to Tombo, talking Tina, then he young Sibatani, then thank you, Hako.
We're talking about this mind, this consciousness, or awareness here, which manifests at times in the various thoughts and concepts that we engage in. There are good thoughts, and there are bad thoughts, there are neutral or natural thoughts, and there may be at times no thought. And even when there's no thought, then still there is awareness. It's not that between thoughts there is a total gap of vacuum, and so between thoughts there's also awareness. What then is this awareness that sometimes manifests as thoughts and sometimes not? Where does it come from? That's the question. So searching for the origin of this awareness, we may discover interestingly that we cannot pinpoint a certain place of origin. We're not able to identify from where it actually appears. So in this process of investigation where we try to find out the origin of our own awareness, we do not find any particular spot. But the reason is that the arisal, the occurrence of awareness is not bound to causes and conditions. Unlike all other phenomena that we know of, which arise in dependence on causes and conditions, like the occurrence of a flower, for example, where we have a place of earth where we plant the seed into and add the fuel and the water and warmth and so on. And by all those conditions and causes, finally we can watch the process of arisal of this flower. The flower occurs at a certain spot because it is linked to causes and conditions. Our mind is not of that kind, since it does not depend on causes and conditions in its occurrence. We are not able to name the place of birth.
Yeah,
wenn es jetzt dazu Fragen gibt, if there are any questions related to that, please, they're welcome.